Welcome back, YouTubers. Back to the channel. Go ahead and hit that like and that subscribe button for me so that I can get lots of money. The more subscribers I get, the more money I get, and I become a rich, famous welding instructor. Yes, I do that joke every time. Is it funny every time? Probably not. Am I going to continue to do it every time? Yes, I am. Okay, so today what we're going to do, we got to start blending out our project. I've got the diamond all welded up here, okay? So now what we want to do is take these welds off and blend them so that it looks like it's one big diamond, because most normal diamond bling bling are not all several different pieces. It's all one diamond. So I want to sand those and make it look as though it just rolls right into an edge, so that these welds are no longer welds. It looks like it's solid one piece of metal all the way across the whole surface. That process is called blending, okay? And if we had more time, I'd go into more depth, but at this point, we've got to get these projects done. So we're not going to get too crazy on it, but I did want to go over the process for doing that. Figured it'd be easier to show you up close in detail on the video than it would be to actually do it in person, but I can also give you some in-person help as needed, okay? So first things first, don't forget about our grinder safety, all right? Number one, we always set the grinders facing up like so, and don't forget when we go to plug these guys in, we do want to make sure that the lock switch is on the off position, right? You're holding onto the grinder here and pick up the plug it in, and turn this on. If this switch is in the on position, it will run. So make sure we got the switches always checked before you plug a grinder in. Make sure that off switch is in the off position, okay? I've already done that with this one, so this one's ready to roll. This is the one that we're gonna use, that I'm gonna use, because the welds on this project look pretty good. That's because, you know, who made those welds. So anyways, those welds they're gonna blend pretty easily. So I'm gonna go right here with this flap disc. Sanding pad. I don't need to remove a whole bunch of material. I think this is the one most of you guys are going to want to use. Now, some of you, if you have some really rough, chunky spots, we need to get some heavy-duty grinding, remove a lot of material. We want to go to this guy. That's the grinding wheel versus our flap disc or sanding disc, right? The sanding discs look more like this one with a flex pad on the back. So we can use those or this one. These essentially do the same thing, just a couple different styles of blending. And like I said, I'd go into more detail if we had more time. But for now, that guy's going to do it. This one, we want to stay away from. That's the zip wheel cutoff disc, right? So that's for cutting. You don't want to use this for doing anything we're going to do here, unless, of course, you're trying to cut a piece apart. Then we would use this one. But for our purposes, we're not going to use that one today. We'll set that one off to the side. We're also probably not going to need the grinding wheel because our welds on this one look pretty good. All right, so we've got figured out which grinder we're going to use. 4.5-inch angle grinder, 11,000 RPMs. Always make sure that the discs are rated for the right speed and the right diameter. We will all the ones that I'll have set up for you will be correct. Sorry about that sun. I got to kind of stand. That's a bad spot to be filming this morning, but oh well. So this is the one we're looking for. Now, a couple things next then. We got to hold the project. Can't hold this with one hand. I don't ever want to see any of this action going on, okay? Where's the sun? There it is. I don't want to see anybody holding the project with one hand and grinding with the other hand, okay? It's a good way to take this down your arm, grind your finger off, etc. We're always going to clamp this part securely to a table or in a vise. So, to clamp to this table, let me, let's see. If I go like that, is that gonna help? Okay, that'll help some. I'm gonna clamp this piece in this vise, okay? Because there's not a real good way to clamp this part to a table. Now, let me pull the table over here. If we had a more square project, if this was a kind of flat surface, I could easily clamp this to this table with a C-clamp like this. Let me grab that camera and bring this over a little closer. Boy, this production quality of this YouTube video is high level. Okay, so I would clamp this one here, right? I could put my square project, you know, say for example, we were doing some sort of rectangle. this out at the top on there. I can clamp this off the edge like this so I can still grind this edge. And then I'd be able to grind 3 of the edges probably, and then I'd have to unclamp it, spin it, and grind the other 2. So you can use these tables to grind, but this one would be a little tricky to clamp that way. I could get creative and maybe clamp on the point, but it might want to roll. I could actually probably do that to grind these long surfaces. I think for this project, the vise is probably going to work better. So I've got the standing vise here, and you'll have to play with these a little bit and experiment. If you get stuck and need some help on how to grind, how to hold the part to grind, I'll be happy to help you kind of come up with a solution. There's always a way to hold them, but you sometimes will have to get a little bit creative. Okay, I think for this one I'm going to go this way, right here. Set the project in here. This one might not be. There we go. Okay, and that's pretty. Oh no, it fell out of there. Let's see. There we go. That's going to work. Okay, so what I want to do now, I'm going to blend these 2 edges. Okay, so I'm going to start with this edge, and I'm going to blend it, and I'm going to blend this one. Now, the trick to this whole thing is that you want this to be flat when it's done. So the really nice job blending is when you're going to have a flat edge roll into another flat edge. Now, the problem is that the sheet metal right here is already flat, and so is this piece of sheet metal. So if I take metal out of the sheet metal, that will reflect light differently. It will no longer be flat. You'll have a dip, right? It'll dip in there, and it will reflect the light as such, and it will look funky because it won't be a smooth, nice, easy transition. It will have, especially if you put a glossy coat on this, a glossy powder coat, or it will definitely reflect the light differently, and it'll look weird. So what we want to do is make it as flat as possible. So we want to not grind the sheet metal. Our goal here is to just blend the welds, not grind stuff down. Yes, this will turn shiny if we grind it. No, you don't want it to be shiny. Okay, I have students always want to grind this thing until it's all shiny, but then it's always going to look rough. It's never going to have a smooth texture to it. The welds won't blend right because it'll always have those facets and it'll reflect light differently. I can demonstrate that to you on some scrap if we have time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just hold the grinding wheel to just kind of flush off the weld until it just matches this piece of sheet metal. And then I'll turn it this direction and I'll just flush off the weld right here until it matches this piece of sheet metal. And then once I have those 2, then I'll roll this grinder. I'll roll the edge to blend it. Okay, let me show you what I mean. And I'll go ahead and do this edge and a couple of these edges that you'll be able to see a little bit easier. Okay, so set this guy back up here. And to do that, I gotta be careful not to grind on my, not to shoot grinding spray at my computer here. And this is the same goes for you guys. You want to make sure that your grinding spray is going in a safe spot. We're gonna do all this grinding outside, which is why I'm out here today. We don't want to grind in the shop. We want to avoid grinding in the shop as much as we can. Okay? Do as little of grinding in there as possible. So what I'm going to do, face shield required, right? Face shield and safety glasses. I'm going to take this flap disc and I'm going to let the weight of the grinder just float across that surface. I'm not going to push down. You don't need to push down. In fact, if you push down, you're probably going to overheat the grinding wheel, cause it to glaze over, and won't work as well. It's actually more effective just to let it kind of do its thing. Okay, so let me start by just flushing this edge out to this surface. And because these welds are pretty good, it's going to be pretty easy to do. This is where the better the welds are, the easier they are to blend. Okay, so grinder on. Remember, we're going to work on the top half of the grinder, right? So this top edge up here, and we're going to hold it at a little bit of an angle. So if the piece is flat, we have a little bit of an angle right here, not too steep. We don't want to be on the edge of the grinding wheel, but we don't want to try to hold it flat like this because it's not designed to do that. It's designed to have about a 10-degree kick right here, okay? 10 to 15 degrees. All right, let's take a look. This will be a good one to show you. Hopefully I can get these camera angles correct here. Okay, first one. Let's look at the one that blended out really nicely. That looks really good. This straight across here, sheet metal just blended really smooth across that weld. Same thing on this long one here. I got a little bit to do right here at the end. You could take your fingernail and kind of feel if there's any lip. Okay, this one at this end right here, you'll see it blends right off the edge, but on this end, there's where my fingernail gets stuck. Okay, right there on that edge. That means that I don't know how well the camera will pick that up. Let's see if we can. But that means that it has to go more. Now, the problem is, you see that it started to grind and make this grind clear over here, which means I have to be careful because I don't want this spot, I don't want that to go lower than the sheet metal. So I want to kind of stop right here, but I got to get this edge down to blend. If I leave that edge, that will show when we coat this, right? When we paint it or powder coat it, it'll show where that you'll see the light difference. It'll have that hard edge there. If this was an exterior product, it would rust, would build up right there because moisture would get trapped. So we want to blend that one a little bit more. Okay. So let me go ahead and get that surface knocked down a little bit more, and then we'll check back in. Okay. So let's see here. Pop that guy up there again. Just a tad more on that surface. Okay, really light pressure. I used very, very light pressure, and this is all looks good now. Got that blended now. I kind of had to work this side a little bit, but to get a really unique grind, a really uniform grind, you want to try to work the grinder from one edge to the other. You don't want to go back and forth in little bits because then you'll get spots where it's faceted, right? It's going to have like dips and dives and that kind of stuff. We don't want that. We want it to be smooth all the way across. So especially on a longer edge, like when I get ready to do this one, I want to try to work that grind all the way down and then all the way back and then all the way down and then all the way back, right? Which I'll show you here on this guy in just a sec. So this half of these pieces or these welds look good. They're ready to, they all look nice. Okay. Now I'm ready to blend them off this way. Okay. So I'll blend this one off, and this one off. We'll square those corners up. Then we'll come back through and roll them. Now, something to think about. This corner right here, I'm going to be grinding that when I grind this corner, this weld. I'm going to be grinding it when I grind this weld. I'll be grinding it when I grind this edge and when I grind this edge. Anytime you have multiple corners that come together, you run the risk of removing a lot of material in that corner. So you really want to watch that. What happens is a lot of times students start grinding their projects and they don't realize that every time they go across here, they're grinding this corner, and we end up grinding a hole or grinding away all the material that was in that corner. So you really got to be cautious on the corners and make sure you're leaving enough material there. We don't want to grind holes into the corners of the project. All right. So now let me blend, being conscientious of those holes. Let me blend these other edges, and then we'll take a look at it. Okay. So now I'm going to turn the grinder on end this way. And if I grind right here at this direction, I'm going to shoot the sparks straight up. I mean, I'm outside, it probably would be okay, but it's pretty easy to solve that issue by just spinning the grinder over to the other side. Now the sparks are going down, right? Remember on the front of the grinder, it'll show you it'll always tell you which direction the wheel's going to spin. Okay, here we go. I did a little back and forth to get a high spot, and then I went full distance from one end all the way to the other. Nice light pressure, and I got that end blended. Let me do the same to this side. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so focus here, camera. So this one blended and there's no weld left. This one smoothed out this edge and that edge, and I can still see a little bit of weld. It doesn't want to focus too close, maybe. There's a little bit of weld in the middle here, so that's where I'll use my little roll technique to get that figured out. Same thing over here. This one went pretty well. I've got one low spot right here where there's not quite enough weld, so that's where I may want to put a little more weld in there, but I think that's where if I keep grinding, I could end up grinding a hole in this corner, so I have to be careful there. But I think it'll work out okay. I think there's enough material there, I'll be able to get that out. So now I'm going to take the grinder, and my objective here is to take, so again, to review, flush with the top, then I went flush with the side. Okay, now I'm ready to kind of knock this corner down, and I'm going to go at a little bit of an angle here. If you can see this angle here, I'm going to go forward, and then I'm going to roll it a little bit this way, come back, roll it a little bit that way, and go forward. And I'm going to try again here. This is where I really want to, now that I'm really blending, I want to go full length, full length, full length. Okay, I don't want to do back and forths in here because that's where I'll end up with the creating a deep spot somewhere in the middle of the weld. I want them to look as straight as possible. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that, and then we'll see how it turns out here. And I'm able to touch all this because I'm not grinding away, pushing hard. The heat is being dissipated by the sparks that are removing off of this part. If you're grinding away heavily, you don't want to touch this with your bare hands. It will get hot and it'll burn you. So you want to be careful and cautious there. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Let me let's see. Let's take a look at this guy out of here. Bring it over to you. Okay. So you can see that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that blend. Same thing on this edge. This grinding technique, guys, is one of the, if you can put a nice finish on a project, that will separate your work from a hack. There's a lot of guys out there. Whenever I see like a headache rack or driving around town on a pickup truck or something, I take a peek at it, and you can tell when it was a rookie built that thing, and there's just thick grinder marks all over every weld joint. And then you see those ones that are just fully flushed out, blended perfectly, and you can't tell where anything was welded. Same thing with like a really high-end handrail. That's the difference between building a handrail on a $5 million house in Shell Beach versus some hack job at a city park somewhere that just looks terrible, right? So anyway, that's a lot of that difference. I mean, yes, the fabrication and the welding skill is there, and of course that's where the patience came in putting this part together. But really, this patience grinding makes a huge difference as well. Okay. So that's really what we're looking for. Let me flush out a few more of these and I'll do these ones a lot more quickly. I won't talk about them quite as much. Let me take a look at those and I'll show you those and you can see where we're at. Okay. So I'm going to go back to that same spot. This time I'm going to do the top and I'll get a couple of these edges. Again, really light pressure. I just skimmed this surface is now flush. Now I want to do this one and flush it off this way. Okay. That looks great. Now I'm going to roll that edge. Looking pretty good. Check those welds out. Not bad, huh? Boy, this is going to be a bling, bling diamond. My wife and I just celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary. You think if I gave her this for our 16th, I'd get away with not buying her a present? Yeah, I don't think so either. I'd get her something nice, but boy, that would be a huge rock, man. If this was a real diamond, I could retire and take you guys all out for lunch. Anyways, here it is. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Let me know if you have questions. I'll come help you. But we're looking for that craftsmanship, right? We want this thing nice. This is where the craftsmanship comes into play. Again, we want everything we build to look professional. We don't want it to look like it was made in a high school metal shop. That's the whole trick to all the stuff that we make here, right? When we build it, we want people not to believe that we made it here because it's so nice and so professional looking. And this is the craftsmanship. This is where it comes into play on this type of thing right here, right? This is the finishing of the product. Now, if we have time, we'll powder coat these. I'll show you how to do that in my next YouTube drop. In the meantime, smash that like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the flip side.